I have been so fortunate in my career to be immersed in the teacher inquiry literature, and specifically looking at pre-service inquiry and how that can scaffold and help support the development of a disposition of inquiry as a professional that can really pull you through your career in a generative, productive way.
One of my favorite things about watching teacher candidates is how there is this beautiful synthesizing of their passions and their interests within theory and practice. So really saying, okay, if this is something that I love, how do I do this in a way that is going to be meaningful and impactful within a classroom space? And when we think about reflexivity, that concept of returning to these ideas of bias, unpacking what are the limitations of our knowledge, what is our own positionality, how do we explore privilege within these conversations, and just seeing somebody who began with inquiry as I would love to engage in outdoor learning to what is land-based practice to how does this impact students in their own understandings of self, how do we build relationality, and getting to that depth of that question is because we're able to sit in a space of curiosity.
The point of teacher candidate inquiry is to really set up teacher candidates for what will be lifelong practice, being reflective teachers, looking at what's going on for learners, adjusting their own practice is critical.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of collaboration with your colleagues and finding someone who's like-minded, and it doesn't have to be someone who teaches the same grade. I'm very fortunate. I have another 6-7 teacher who we're so like-minded, and we have different strengths that we bring to the table, and we do all our planning together. But I also plan really closely with our grade 3 buddy class. We do a lot of really neat things together, and with our kindergarten class.
Every teacher and prospective teacher has a unique context that they've come from. They have a unique voice and a unique style. So I think that inquiry is so important in teacher education because it gives us room to find our path and our personal pedagogy and really gives that the honor of time and purpose to develop that and edit it and work through it. So I think being able to approach things from your perspective and your context, especially in a place-based kind of focus.
So in the spiral of inquiry, one of the things I absolutely love about the scanning stage, the first stage, is that we try to incorporate student voice. We listen to students. We ask them questions about what's going on for their learning, how they learn best, what are the things that they're struggling with, what are their goals and aspirations. Having those like profound conversations with kids, as well as using our class profiles, using the conversations we may have had with mentor teachers or school advisors, with our faculty advisors, to better understand the context of our classroom. That then is what informs teachers' ability to be able to inquire into practice.
It gives teacher candidates an opportunity to do their own inquiry during their practice, to help them think about different ways that they can approach teaching and different ways to find ways to grow their practice and how to engage students. And then from the opposite side, it gives you a glimpse how you could approach inquiry in your own classroom and how posing questions to your kids can get them thinking about things in a different way.
Inquiry is one of those opportunities you have to look into your practice and look into the work that you're doing to find a way to make it your own, find a way to find the people who you connect with, find a way to become the educator that you are. The other part of that is you don't know who you're going to become, and engaging inquiry through your education career actually allows you to become a person who you didn't know you were going to become. And that to me is actually a big part of having engaged in inquiry throughout my career at this point in time, that started out in my BEd year, that it has laid a foundation for myself to become an educator that is willing to be surprised, I guess.
I think inquiry really allows you to find your interest and your place, like in a school and in education and within the classroom. So what are your passions? What areas are you most interested in? And how can you further your own learning so that you can bring that back to your students through those like inquiry pieces?
Inquiry is really the thing that is my motor for teaching. Like, it's the thing that really gets me to wake up in the morning and look forward to my day. I think that the feeling of those kids coming up to you and saying like, I still remember it, and like that's, you know that you've done something well, and that's still been a big win for me.
So I focused on the impact of having hands-on activities in a science classroom. And so for every lesson that I gave in my Life Science 11 class, I did a hands-on activity or a lab. And my focus was on student engagement, attendance, understanding their perception of their understanding. Because when I did my observations prior to my practicum, I noticed lack of attendance with some students, and I noticed sort of just some apathetic attendees who just were there to take notes. And so I wanted to change that. And what I found was level of engagement went through the roof. They were excited to come to class, they wanted to be there. I had students attending who had not been previously attending. They were coming maybe once a week, and one of my students came to every class once I started teaching. I centered a lot of my lessons around Indigenous teaching with life sciences, great place to do it. And I had one student that I had in mind when I was doing that, and she came to every class and was so excited about it. Yeah, when my Indigenous students stood up and cheered, that was the moment. Yeah, it was good.
So there are a lot of different frameworks that you can use to incorporate Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing into your educational practice and connect them to inquiry. I think that inquiry is Indigenous pedagogy in action, and that Indigenous pedagogy continues to inform the ways in which we engage in inquiry. And within our coursework, we usually start with the First Peoples Principles of Learning as a way to sort of open ourselves up to the many different ways in which we can conceptualize the idea of learning, the idea of knowledge. And from that, it's important that we are able to explore our own relationships to learning. And when we're able to explore our own relationships to learning, we're able to situate ourselves within that action. And in doing so, that is that integral piece of building that relationship with knowledge, that we are always engaging in a reciprocal give and take. What are we taking from every experience, and then how are we using that in order to create something beautiful to give back into the world? And I think teacher inquiry, that's really what we're hoping to do, is that synthesization of all of these different theories to say, how do we give back to the world in a way that's meaningful and purposeful? We see so much of that idea of exploring our relationships to place, exploring our relationships to our students, exploring our relationships to the classroom and to the community around us. We have a lot of conversations about the fact that when our students come into our classroom, they bring their whole community with them. And so when we think about our educational practice, how are we doing so in order to support the whole community, not just our individual learners? What does it mean to take learning and extend it beyond the classroom? And inquiry really pushes us into that space of saying, what if? How do we do this? What does it mean to be a good ancestor? What does it mean to walk alongside one another gently? And how do we celebrate ourselves in that process? How do we celebrate our learners in that process? And I think that's such a beautiful piece about inquiry, is that it really is about saying, let's nurture and grow together. And how do we do that in a good way?
I did an inquiry on materials in teaching, and I wanted to see how engagement for learning and the kind of learning that occurred would be enhanced or distracted or deepened, or whatever would happen with it, with the use of materials. So I chose loose parts and invitations for learning, morning provocations through that. I did natural loose parts, so a lot of outdoor learning and a lot of building and creating outside. Approaching like a real inquiry with students for the first time was a really learning experience, because you go in with kind of an idea of how it's going to turn out. And it's so interesting when it doesn't turn out how you expected. Wow, who would have thought? But I think that going in, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I kind of really tried to stay open and allow that inquiry to form as I formed relationships with the students. So I think that inquiry is so exciting that it's hard to resist the temptation to just jump in. But when you pull yourself back and really honor that scanning phase, I think it's really important to allow the true nature of inquiry, where things come up and you seize them, to be part of that process. So in my practicum, going in with like a relationship building first, relationships before projecting onto them what I thought that they might be interested in, was a really important step that I had to kind of force myself to take. But I got so much more than I didn't expect out of it by taking the time to really figure out what that direction was going to take.
When the teacher candidates are first entering into their practicum and having their first experiences with their students, a lot of the time what we ask our students to do is to sit in that space of wonder. Just sort of take that time to do that scan of the classroom to see what's going on in this space, what's going on for our learners, where are you seeing them gravitating towards, who's sitting next to each other, what questions are they asking as you circulate with them, and just sort of taking the time to be observant. Because sometimes I find, especially when people go into the practicum space, they want to jump in and they want to get into that space of action. And learning the routines and the procedures and the dynamics in the classroom is so important in order to be able to sort of weave yourself into that relationship and to say, what am I bringing into this space? How do I help support and nurture the gifts of my students, and what are those gifts? And so in inquiry, what we're really hoping to see is how do we continuously take that time to engage in reflexivity, to sit and to reflect on what practices we're seeing and what's being utilized within the classroom spaces and how they're benefiting students, or are there things that we need to let go of in order to be able to shift and change our approach to learning in order to benefit the unique learners in our spaces. And so in that, when it comes to teacher inquiry, I think it's just be curious. Be curious, be curious, be curious.
Practicum with a mentor teacher is an opportunity to be in collaboration all the time. And so you have the opportunity to co-plan, to co-teach, to reflect and adapt as you go. It's a time when you can try new things, and your mentor teacher may also have a chance to try new things, and you can do it together. When you're doing it together, it is powerful.
And having that strong underpinning in the BEd program, when teachers are beginning that practice of we work together, we don't work in isolation, sets people up for a teaching career that's filled with the joy of what comes when we work with our colleagues, what comes when we have others to be able to inquire with and to be able to learn from and learn alongside. What we know so much from professional learning research is that it's the collective expertise, as John Hattie talks about, the biggest impact on student learning is teachers working together, supporting student learning. Having that network of collaborative, critical friends to be able to bounce ideas off of, to be able to build together more than we can build independently and individually is a lifelong practice for teachers.
I really like learning in community, and during your BEd year that's happening. When you are in a practicum with a mentor teacher, that is happening. But once you get out of that situation, you have to actually seek them out yourself. You have to seek out those opportunities to find that community and find those things that fill you up. Who are the people that are in your, whether it's your school or your school district or even out in the community, who are the people who you're going to work with?
It's so easy to put yourself into a vacuum and to just be in your classroom and close the door. And really, there's so much to focus on in teaching. It's so easy to get so wrapped up on that you never bring your head up. But I think that your colleagues are so similar to you, and that everyone that you're working with can be such a support in that, and that asking for help is crucial to this work. To know that we can't do it all by ourselves, and it's a disservice to the kids to try. It's so important to have that personal and professional learning network, and to cultivate that wherever you can find it, if it's virtually, if it's in person, if it's at your school, in your district, and across the province. I think that it's just such a incredible thing to build, and to hear what people are doing, what they have to say, and to be able to ask questions and stuff has been something that's been so rewarding for me, for sure.
The work I have done in my BEd and the following years has led me to being somebody who can naturally jump into those spaces and participate in a way that it just allows me to contribute in a way, again, that comes back to that idea of filling my heart by doing the work that I really love.
Having an inquiry mindset and an open mindset allows me to be more responsive to my students. Being a responsive teacher to me is watching my students, listening to them, seeing what they're doing, and essentially taking that as feedback and then refining what I'm doing to meet their needs better.
If we ground ourselves in a pedagogical stance, if we ground ourselves in constantly developing and revising our philosophy as educators, we then need to commit ourselves to inquiry, to being inquiring professionals, to asking questions, to making sense, to withholding judgment, and to seeking and exploring ways to understand our learners and our contexts that can be more responsive, that draw on their funds of knowledge, but also draw on research, so that we can be reflexive in our teaching, so that we can be more generous in our teaching, but perhaps most essentially to recognize that we ourselves are learners, and that our teachers and our contexts and our communities are teachers to us. And so taking an inquiry stance or a practitioner inquiry approach really helps us continue to be students of teaching, students of learners, students of our places. And that can be so deeply fulfilling, because then we are in a constant state of accepting and even reveling in our unknowing, and over time building understandings that are richer and transformative for us, as well as the communities that we work with.